Okay, let's unpack this monumental figure, a man often called the father of Europe.
We're talking about Charlemagne, of course, lived from roughly 742 to 814 AD.
And if you want to find the person who really kicked off the Middle Ages as we know them,
Mhm.
well, this is your guy.
It's really not an exaggeration. He is, in so many ways, the foundational figure of modern Western Europe.
So our mission today is to understand how. How did this Frankish king build an empire that big?
Right, an empire spanning modern France, Germany, Italy, and then organize it with laws and even spark an intellectual revival, all in an era people sometimes call the Dark Ages.
Yeah, we're not just listing battles. We're trying to find those surprising details that show how he built a system that influenced rulers for, what, the next 1,000 years?
At least. So to start at the beginning, Charlemagne was born into one of the most powerful families in Europe, the Frankish royal family.
So he wasn't exactly a self-made man.
Not at all. His father was Pepin the Short, who was already the king of the Franks. This was pure royalty from day one.
And his upbringing was basically the perfect training for a king in that era, right? I mean, he wasn't just learning philosophy.
No, not at all. He was focused on very practical, very essential skills. Mastering horseback riding, fighting, military strategy, all things you absolutely needed to defend your territory.
But I've read he was also really interested in education, even as a young man.
He was, which is what's so often overlooked. He was fluent in multiple languages, and critically, he traveled with his father's army. Think of it as on-the-job training.
So he's seeing warfare and politics firsthand.
Exactly. He's learning leadership in a way you just can't get from a book, and he would need all of that training and fast.
Because when his father Pepin died, the kingdom was split.
It was, between Charlemagne and his brother Carloman. And that created, well, a huge amount of tension. Two kings, two halves of a kingdom. It's a recipe for conflict.
But that conflict never really happened, did it?
It didn't, because in 771 AD, Carloman died. Suddenly. Unexpectedly.
And just like that, Charlemagne becomes the sole ruler of the entire Frankish kingdom.
In that one moment, history changes. He's 30 years old, he's powerful, and now he's completely unleashed.
And his first priority was basically conquest.
Absolutely. He spent years, decades really, leading his armies to expand his borders. And we have to appreciate the sheer scale of this.
Yeah, this wasn't just one quick campaign.
Not even close. He was fighting on multiple fronts, so look north. He fought the Saxons for over 30 years.
30 years.
30 years. Then you look south. He conquered the Lombards in Italy. He even led his armies over the Pyrenees Mountains to campaign in Spain.
Which is incredible, but it's not just about the fighting, is it? It's the logistics. How do you keep thousands of soldiers supplied and moving across those kinds of distances?
You have to build. That's the key. He invested heavily in infrastructure. He built fortresses. He established road networks. These weren't just for war, they were for governance.
So his armies could move quickly.
And his messengers and his officials. The result was this massive empire. But here's the real insight. Before Charlemagne, laws were mostly local.
Right, decided by a local lord or a tribe.
Exactly. When Charlemagne conquered a territory, he forced them to follow the unified laws of the Frankish state.
That sounds revolutionary for the time.
It was. It was a huge step toward a modern, centralized government. He was forcing all these different cultures, Saxons, Lombards, Franks, under a single legal framework. That's the glue that held the empire together.
And that unity also extended to religion, which brings us to the Pope.
Pope Leo III, yes.
Oh.
A crucial relationship. The church in Rome was constantly under threat and desperately needed a military protector.
And Charlemagne saw himself as that protector.
He saw it as his duty, his divine beauty even. So they formed this powerful alliance, the Frankish sword, protecting the spiritual heart of Europe.
And that alliance gets tested in the year 799.
It does. The Pope is in serious trouble. He was attacked by rivals in Rome, accused of all sorts of crimes, and he had to flee the city.
And where does he go?
Straight to Charlemagne for help, for protection. And Charlemagne sends him back to Rome with a huge armed Frankish guard.
So that act alone makes it clear who's really in charge.
It establishes Charlemagne as the ultimate power broker in the West, which sets the stage for one of the most famous moments in European history.
The journey to Rome in the winter of 800.
Yes, and think about that journey. December, across the Alps. It was a brutal trip. He arrives and spends weeks meeting with leaders, working to formally clear the Pope of all the charges against him.
He's basically acting as the judge of the Pope himself.
He is, and all of this tension builds until Christmas Day, 800 AD.
Okay, so imagine the scene. St. Peter's Basilica, it's packed. You've got Frankish warriors, Roman citizens, everyone. and Charlemagne kneels to pray.
The atmosphere must have been absolutely electric. As he rises from his prayer, Pope Leo steps forward, and he places a golden crown on Charlemagne's head.
And the crowd just erupts.
An explosion of noise. They start shouting that he is now the great and peace-giving emperor of the Romans.
This wasn't just a coronation. This was reviving a titled Roman emperor that had been gone in the West for over 300 years.
Historians still debate how surprised Charlemagne actually was by the timing, but he absolutely accepted the title. And by doing so, he forever linked his Frankish kingdom to the ancient tradition of Rome.
So, okay, he has this new grand title, emperor. What did that actually change for him day to day?
Well, first and foremost, status. Instantly, he has a higher rank than any other king in Europe. It makes him the equal of the emperor in the East, in Constantinople.
So it's a political statement.
A huge one. And it gives him legitimacy. It suggests he's the rightful successor to leaders like Augustus and Constantine. He's not just some powerful warlord anymore.
He's an emperor, with all the history that implies.
And he used that to unify the diverse peoples in his empire. He could say his empire was a holy state protected by divine will, by God. It gave him the authority to demand absolute loyalty from every count and lord in his territory.
So we have the grand vision, the titles, but that doesn't run an empire. How did he actually make this thing work? He was famous for his organization.
He was a stickler for order, yes. He knew that governing was harder than conquering. So to manage daily life, he created a set of written laws called capitularies.
Capitularies, what were they, like a law book?
Kind of. Think of it like a massive, constantly updated policy manual for the whole empire. And they covered everything.
Everything.
Everything. How courts should run, rules for farming, trade regulations. It shows he was thinking about every single part of governance.
That laws are only as good as the people enforcing them, right?
Precisely. Which is why his other solution was so brilliant. He appointed special traveling messengers called the Missi Dominici.
The Missi Dominici. So what, they were like spies?
More like internal auditors or investigators sent directly from the top. Usually a church official and a lay official would travel unannounced to check on the local counts.
To make sure they weren't corrupt or stealing money.
Exactly. It was an early, very sophisticated form of government accountability. And he insisted that every single person should have access to a fair trial.
And he needed a capital, a physical center for all this organization.
And he chose Aachen. He built a magnificent palace there with architecture deliberately designed to look like the grand buildings of Rome and Constantinople.
Another statement that his new capital is just as important.
And it had a personal touch. Aachen had natural hot springs, and Charlemagne loved to swim. It shows that even an emperor needed some downtime.
Okay, so from buildings to brains, this is where he has his most lasting impact, right? The Carolingian Renaissance.
It's arguably his greatest legacy outside of warfare. See, Charlemagne noticed a problem. A lot of his government officials and even priests weren't educated enough to do their jobs well.
They couldn't read the laws or write clear letters.
Right. An empire that big runs on smart people. So he issued a massive, game-changing order. Every monastery and cathedral in his empire had to start a school for young boys.
Just ordered it. He made education mandatory.
He did. And to kickstart it, he hired the most famous scholar of the day, Alcuin of York, to run his palace school. Alcuin oversaw this huge project of copying ancient books by hand, preserving knowledge that might have been lost.
And they innovated too. They developed a new writing style.
Yes, Carolingian minuscule. If you look at older scripts, they're often cramped, hard to read. Carolingian minuscule was like hitting the clear font button. It had spaces between words, uniform letters.
Which made it much easier and faster to read and copy.
Exactly. And that simple innovation helped save countless classical Latin texts. It's the basis for our own lowercase letters today.
Incredible. So that intellectual boom is happening alongside very practical reforms for everyday people.
Right. The economy. Most people were farmers, and Charlemagne introduced rules to boost food production. He promoted the heavy plow, which was vital for the tough soils in northern Europe.
And he encouraged the three-field system, right? How did that work?
It was a huge leap forward. Instead of farming half your land and letting the other half rest, you'd plant crops in 2/3 of the land and only let 1/3 rest.
So you get more food from the same amount of land.
A lot more. It led to more stable food supplies, and to stabilize the economy, he got rid of all the different local coins.
Oh, that must have been a mess for trade.
A total nightmare. So he created a standardized silver coin, the denarius. It was like adopting a single currency, like the euro, across his entire empire. It made trade predictable and fair.
So for the average person, what was life like? Still hard, I assume,
Oh, life was definitely hard. Small houses, simple clothes, working from sunrise to sunset. But the crucial difference was security.
because of his army and his laws.
Exactly. Communities could focus on farming and living without the constant fear of invasion or corrupt local lords that had defined the centuries before him.
So when Charlemagne died in 814, what he left behind wasn't just a map. It was a set of ideas.
It was. He left behind institutions. His reign established the idea that a ruler's job wasn't just to conquer, but to actually care for the education, justice, and welfare of his people.
And even though his empire eventually broke up, those systems of law and education influenced European kings for hundreds and hundreds of years. He really is the bridge between the ancient Roman world and the modern nations of France and Germany.
And here's a final thought for you to consider. When Pope Leo pinned that crown on Charlemagne's head, he wasn't just creating an emperor, he was setting a precedent. He established the tradition that the church had the power to legitimize or delegitimize a ruler.
Wow.
And that struggle, the tension between popes and emperors over who had the final say, that dynamic defined European politics for the next 1,000 years.
An incredible life, and one that truly shaped the world we live in. Good luck with your studies.